And we are recording.
Great. Thank you, Daryl. Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10:01 this morning. Roll call and introductions. Just a reminder, we do not do roll call on this meeting just because of the sheer amount of people. Daryl has included the link in the chat. If you guys can go to that link and sign in sometime today, that would be great. First item on our agenda is going to be a install and issue tracker update from Tracy.
Yeah, so everything up the top there has been updated. One of the things we're still working on, Vicki is running the charge with it, is the Vail, Pitkin County. We have to have them, Motorola, Lumen, and Intrado all kind of moving parts with this session. And we did try to make the change last week. It was not successful and had to be rolled back. So right now we are working with, again, the PSAP and Motorola and Intrado to reschedule the plan to move this forward. We did hear from Pitkin County today. They are completely booked next week, so they're not going to be able to do anything prior to the week of the 21st. So they just sent that information to us not too long ago. So we're going to need to get with Motorola and Intrado and see what they show open for the 21st. Again, with the holiday, it's gonna be hard, but our goal is to get this completed before the end of the year. We have to make sure that we are not interrupting, any of their time due to the holidays. So that one is still pending, but we have all the right players in place to participate, which is great. All of the routing issues, and I know Kimberly had sent one in a couple days ago. Those are being worked between Vicki and Intrado, as they should. We're waiting for a response from Intrado. Kimberly, we did get your email, and Vicki is circling back on that. More to come on that one. Air Force bases, unfortunately, the status is the same as last month. That's with Shriver and Cheyenne. I think a hand popped up.
Oh, Mandy, did you have a question?
Just when she's done.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. So that is still ongoing with the Air Force bases. Wes continues to circle back with them. One thing I did want to point out, I mentioned on the Vail and Pitkin and some of the existing routing issues. Vicki is going to continue to work through those, anything that's outstanding. However, we do have a new person that has joined our team, and his name is Andrew. He is on the call today. He is going to be taking on any new items that you normally would have sent to Vicki. She's not leaving Lumen, so she's still an excellent resource to us. And she has agreed to follow through with anything that is happening right now. This would be for everything that comes up after November 1st. You would engage Andrew much like you did Vicki in the past.
Okay. I know we have a couple hands raised, but I wanted to circle back around. Kimberly, is there anything you wanted to ask or add about that misroute that you sent over? I didn't want to just go past it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tina. I not really ask or add. It's just for everyone's awareness. What these misroutes are, again, are calls that are being delivered to one of my PSAPs that are meant for one of your PSAPs in the Denver area specifically. So it's just something in the network that's delivering those calls over to us. That's what they're diving into. So we are very hopeful that they get resolved.
Thank you, Kimberly. Mandy.
I just want to add to the list that as part of our call processing equipment upgrade, we are in the process of installing ESInet at our backup, which is something we did not do when we initially switched over to the ESInet a couple of years ago. But I thought it'd be good to put it on the radar here for the ESInet user group, because that is a project that we are in the middle of, and we're working with Wes and Lumen to get that going. So it is a new install of ESInet at our backup facility, and we'll just be splitting off our concurrent call sessions and so we won't increase our total number of concurrent call sessions, but we will we will be splitting some between our primary and our backup positions, our backup center.
And Mandy, that's the Westco, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're on top of that one. Wes and Vicky, that's definitely a project that Vicky will continue to help out with because she's already got her teeth in it.
Oh, absolutely. I just think it's appropriate to put it on the radar here for this group. And I hadn't brought it up in the past, and I just thought it's probably a good time to put it on. At this point, we don't have any issues or concerns, but again, just to be aware for everybody in the state.
I agree. I'll get it added to this.
Thanks, Mandy. Kevin.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon. So a couple of things regarding Cheyenne Mountain. Cheyenne Mountain's going to move to where they have remote consoles off of El Paso Teller. So I think the initial plan to put circuits and LPGs out there is no longer required. I know Nancy Smith Hammond is tracking that because I think they're Lumen is providing some circuits. Support you get with me offline and let me know the issues you're having there at Schriever and see if we can help.
Yeah, hey, glad to do that, Kevin. And let me see, I'm capturing your email and cell phone here. Do you have you want to send me a quick note here of your cell phone and I'll give you a call, Kevin. Nothing has changed in Schriever for Nancy to try to break through that at this point.
Okay.
Well, I want to talk to you about that. And now in Cheyenne, about a week ago, some of that came back. They're still working with El Paso. I think the current issues there is behind the commercial phone room. They're still sorting out exactly where to nail down some of the circuitry and extend that to the 2 positions that will be installed from El Paso's Central Square. That's the last thing I saw. We can talk about that too.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, we're tracking about the same there. I'll send you an email, Wes. Thank you.
Roger that.
Thanks, Wes. Before we move on to another item, are there any other issues that PSAPs have or any additional installs that we need to add to the list that aren't already on the tracker? Okay. Tracy, quarterly QoS stats.
Yeah, so I needed to circle back with you guys on that. I got with Vicky and Wes. I also talked to Cindy Berry, who, as you know, had this role in all of 2021. And none of us have any record as to what that was, what it looked like, what was included. We do provide some stats to the state of Colorado as far as performance and whatnot. That comes out of our operations team, not the sales or PMO team. But nobody on my side knows exactly what it is you guys are looking for us to go and try to track it down.
So Tracy, this is Daryl. I'm showing
Yes.
the last quarterly report we received, which was in October of 2021, so a little over a year ago. And the list of things that should be included in that quarterly report are actually in the tariff. So this is actually a requirement in the ESInet tariff to include these things. So we have, you probably know what these things are more than I do, but you've got MOS, percent package loss, jitter.
Yeah.
So Wes, in looking at that, I have no idea where this would come from.
That'd have to go back to the NOC, and Tim Kunkelman and I can go back there,
Okay.
for the MOS scores, and have them shake that loose.
Okay.
I think, I thought Tim was on point for that, but we're obviously running a bit behind, so we need to get that.
Daryl, is there a chance that you could email that to me?
Yes, we'll do.
Okay, I just wouldn't have any documentation in 2021. And then it sounds like Wes can circle back with Tim because Cindy definitely didn't know what we were looking for. But if it came from Tim and crew and the NOC, then that makes sense that she wouldn't have pulled it.
And yeah, hey, Daryl, if you'd kindly CC me on that as well, please.
Will do, and I'll also include the page from the tariff that outlines what's supposed to go in that quarterly report. So if you think there are different reports that would fulfill that requirement better, you don't necessarily have to use these. We just need that
You
requirement
just need the
to
data.
be,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, Tracy, is there any other updates you need to provide?
I do not. I don't have anything else that has come up.
Okay. Moving on to old business. Daryl, do you have an update on the tariff filing?
The only update I have is that the judge is still waiting on the parties to let him know what they would like to see as far as the procedural schedule goes. I think that's where it's left off. So, any discussions that that CenturyLink has had with the parties, I'm not aware of, and it can't be aware of because I represent the commission on this. So I don't know what conversations they've had sort of offline. But hopefully that will be provided soon so that the judge can set a hearing date.
Okay, thanks, Daryl. Wes, I know they're kind of on hold for now, but any updates on text or spatial call routing or anything you want to share?
Nothing new. No, we'd like to tuck the ECATs in, get through this procedural thing that Tim is working on with the folks on that, filed that, not the protest, if well, to get past that first. And the GIS, frankly, team, that's going to take a while, I think, because of the challenge of as a 911 community and the provider getting our hands wrapped around that and the best way to move forward. It's pretty complex, I think, to move forward in a way that makes a lot of sense. Well, the text part, we are leaving that open where we can dovetail that in after what the ECATS is done. So there's nothing new to report right now. Hopefully maybe by January or something in that nature, we'll have a clearer vision of what the timing will be there.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks, Wes. Is there anybody on the call that has questions about the tariff amendment, ECATS, text, any of that?
This is
Well, I guess
Daryl.
we
Go ahead,
can't
Wes.
really talk about that in too much detail with Daryl here, correct, Daryl?
Right, on the ECATS, no.
Right.
Nothing to do with negotiations anyway. If it's procedural, we can talk about it.
Right.
Okay, Kimberly?
I guess I just have a little bit of a question about that then. I think Lumen is wanting additional information from 911 authority boards and PSAPs, and I believe they were going to talk about it at the task force meeting tomorrow, but that could also create an issue. So, Wes, I wasn't sure this group seems to be a good group to be seeking input from, so I don't know how we want to do that if you were planning on doing that tomorrow, but Daryl's still part of that discussion tomorrow.
That's correct. So we can't really talk about that tomorrow in any real detail. And I think you might have been copied on Tim Kuckelman's email. It's kind of summarizing that. So I have reached out to some folks, and there's more to chat with about that. As far as the offering that Tim wants to include in the tariff amendment. And I think it's positive. We are looking, though, for affirmation from the users that what Tim has offered up fits everybody, that they want to go ahead with it. I'd be happy to call you afterwards, Kimberly, if that works for your schedule.
Yeah, absolutely, Wes. I just think that there's definitely a lot of conversation that needs to take place with the users, and I just don't know the right format for that since, I guess we could kick Daryl out, but I don't think that's appropriate for his meetings. So maybe we need to have a separate meeting that we can call that has interested parties to come together to talk about it outside of the commission process, if that makes sense.
It does. And how about if I reach out to you after this and talk with, like I said, some other folks, and you were on my list as well to chat with. I think one thing that might be beneficial, and we can talk about that, is maybe a very brief training session as to what the extra modules might do. But again, I'm going to kind of stop there. I don't want to talk about that with and run a conflict here. But I
Yes.
think a little bit more education so that they see the value proposition clearly for what it means for all parties in the state.
Wes and Kimberly, let me know if I can help arrange just a different meeting of the users, and then we can go from there.
Will do.
Tracy.
Hi, this is Tracy Oldemeyer, and I just wanted to add that I believe there was an expectation that Lumen would have a discussion at the task force meeting tomorrow, kind of seeking input and guidance and socializing some of the requirements of any deployment of ECATs, regardless of how many modules are included. So that was my understanding of the intent of its presentation or section at tomorrow's task force meeting. There is no opportunity better than a task force meeting and fulfilling the task force's requirements under Rule 2145. So I would encourage, if Daryl needs to mute himself or step out or whatever, but opportunity with so many folks participating in that meeting, being able to ask questions, get information, I would hope it would be very, very productive. Unfortunately, I think Tim Kunkelman may not make the meeting, given an email he sent about undergoing a medical procedure. So I don't know which Lumen folks are going to take lead, but that's my understanding of the expectation of the task force meeting tomorrow to help keep moving forward on ECATs.
Thank you, Tracy. Daryl, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes. So either for this meeting or for tomorrow's meeting, what we could do is I can stop we could save that discussion for the end of the meeting. I can stop the recording and just turn off my speakers. Then you guys can continue talking without it being recorded and not being part of the, which is especially if it's pertinent to negotiations. You probably don't want that in a recording that's going to be publicly available. So that could be an addendum at the end of the meeting tomorrow if you want it. We could do it that way. Back in 2017, 2018, when the ESInet tariff was being negotiated, that was all done through separate meetings that were not part of the task force meetings at all. So that's another route that you can also take, but I just would offer that up.
All right, thanks, Daryl. Jeffrey.
And several of us have filed NDAs in the matter. Do we need to kind of be circumspect with regard to what we discuss tomorrow?
Yeah, good point. I'd really like to have Tim be available for this, but I will work through it. And I am not sure as far as the NDAs, and which is not that widely circulated. What does that mean as far as the level of discussion that we can have?
Okay, Tracy.
And this is Tracy Oldemeyer. I do believe that the cost study is something that should be discussed in generalities, no specifics, even if it's raised, but it's more along the lines of, here's the ECATS offering and what it includes. Here's the protests and what additional modules they would like, who uses them, who wants them, who needs them, what is the anticipated cost. And then again, talking about deployment. Each PSAP would need to be prepared for these types of things at deployment. So super high level, but again, not in any way trying to share the cost study information that's subject to the NDA.
Kimberly.
I just think that from everyone's time, if you feel like we need to not have a conversation until the right people can be on the call, speaking of Tim and whoever else with the team, we get that. I mean, I totally understand that. So from a timing perspective, I think the conversation needs to happen. And when it happens, I think needs to be around the right people, so we're not having multiple conversations several times. So I don't see that we have a huge urgency, especially if Lumen can't, it's not Tim's fault that he can't be there. So I just think that needs to be communicated with a time frame accordingly if we need to kick the can down the road a little bit.
Jeffrey.
And let me just say this, Wes, would it be helpful for you all to be able to get an indication tomorrow as to who's in favor of which of the scenarios and who's not, just kind of in general?
That would be helpful.
So I just, sorry to jump in there. Let me back up and raise my hand.
No, you're fine. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Okay, Tina called on me. I can talk. I think that would be hard, Jeff, just because I think there's so much information that's pending. So to get an accurate read, and then as PSAPs maybe learn additional information, like their cost to install a firewall, their need for rack space, all the other pieces, we could have a false positive or a false negative, just depending on some of those items that we haven't received answers to yet.
Wes, do you think that it would be best just to schedule a meeting later? I mean, I understand that the task force meeting is the prime time since everybody's there, but if your preference is to have Tim there, then maybe we should just schedule something that everybody can get together at a different date.
Let me make a few calls and I'll let you know, Tina, that might be the case. The engineer should be on the call as well as Tiffany from ECATS. Would like to make sure. I've already sent the invite off to them and waiting for confirmation they can also be on that call. So
Okay.
That's where it stands.
Kimberly, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out task force is great, but it is such a small subset of the PSAPs. And so I would just encourage that conversation is one of many, or one of a few, or a small sample of a larger audience that's probably needed, just because it's only so many authority boards represented.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, let us know what you hear back. And Daryl?
And if you do want to schedule a meeting separately, we can still do it through the ESInet users group email list, and I can start the meeting and not record it and just turn off my speakers and let you guys have your meeting. And I would also suggest to Kimberly's point of view, or Kimberly's point, if you want to reach all of the PSAPs, we have a list of email addresses for all of the PSAPs to let them know about the meeting, because Kimberly's correct. A lot of the PSAPs do not participate in the task force meetings.
And to Patty West's comment just a second ago, Daryl, as well, that I have requested, Patty, that ECATS do just that on those two modules to kind of broaden the intel and understanding of what those bring to the table. So I'm hoping to get confirmation of that, and that would be probably a separate meeting as well. So I get that.
Okay, Wes, let me know what you hear back, and then we can connect and get something together.
Will do.
All right, next item, where I'm at on the agenda. Tracy, 8-digit PSAPs. Do you have an update on Huerfano County?
Yes, we did have our technician go out there a couple weeks ago and made some changes. We did test calls with Entrado, and they are now bidding the 10 digits, so we can take them off the list.
Excellent.
Still not getting feedback and confirmation out of DIA. Entrado does show 8 for them still. Keep in mind, DIA, from what I understand, is a transfer PSAP only. So Wes, I think one of these days you were going to try to reach out to one of your contacts there about updating equipment, because you didn't think it was that old. But when we do try to bid the 10 digits, it does fail at the Entrado level.
I have spoken with Ray, and
Okay.
we are looking to update that and get that corrected. It should still do the 10 digits there. So we did send that tech down there, but we're working on that. And,
Okay.
and talking with Ray about it.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracy.
Mhm.
I just had 2 issues from last month's new business meeting. Kimberly, I hope you don't mind, but I was wondering if you had an update on the roaming calls showing as NSI phones. I think you were going to meet with the carriers.
Yeah, so I did. I met with the carriers that are on our task force, as well as CTIA, and I have a really good understanding of what's going on. I don't agree with it, but it's not network driven. So I'm happy to give an update. I'm also going to update at the task force meeting tomorrow. So if people don't mind a bit of redundancy, I can talk through that quickly.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so what we have found from all the calls that we were able to research, so what's happening, just to baseline for everybody, our calls are coming in, some of them, not all of them, of course, and they appear to be NSI calls, but they're not. There's active service behind that account, so it's not one of those donated phones calling 911. And how we're able to track it down is in that call questioning. So what's the phone number you're calling from? They give a phone number. Can we reach at this number? And we're able to confirm it's an active service plan behind that number. So we were able to also track down the carrier and then submit tickets with either Intrado or Contact so they can look at behind the scenes as to what's going on with these calls. And what we found is, and this has been again confirmed by carriers, with the turn down of 2G and 3G and the turning up of 4G and 5G, there's a big gap in service coverage. And with carriers that have 2G and 3G still up, they are required to process emergency phone calls on any network. And there's a term for that. I don't have it in front of me. So these calls that are showing as NSI calls are roaming onto networks, and there's no roaming agreement between the carriers, and they are not required, nor do they pass data. So they're required by law to process the 911 call, but they are not required to pass data, nor are they required to have roaming agreements with one another. So the majority of the calls up here were T-Mobile calls, and it's because T-Mobile, and it was on T-Mobile's network, because T-Mobile hasn't turned down 2G and 3G in several areas, but it was from carriers like Verizon, AT&T that customers have roamed over to their network, processed 911, but no data comes through. So diving into the FCC requirements, there was a conversation at the FCC started by NASNA in 2015 about NSI phones and about roaming, and there was no rulemaking attached to that. Therefore, carriers do not have to have roaming agreements, nor do they have to pass out data, caller information. So we have to tolerate it for now, but we may want to do something at the FCC, or at least put something in front of the FCC to reopen this conversation with them. So that's what I found. And then I'm going to have some diagrams and kind of talk through this with more detail tomorrow, since it can get a little complicated. But any questions on that? End of the story, it's not Lumen's fault. So you guys skate on this one.
Daryl?
Hey, we'll take it.
Not a question, just a quick comment, because being Colorado's representative to NASNA, I was part of that conversation that they had as well. And NASNA files petitions with the FCC occasionally. Unlike in Colorado, where if you file a petition with the Public Utilities Commission, it has to respond one way or the other. The FCC doesn't. So sometimes these petitions just go to the FCC and they sit on them for years, and they may eventually respond to them, or they may not. But since it has been several years, I don't think it would hurt at all to, if the task force particularly wanted to file another petition with the FCC requesting that they address this, it might prompt them to reconsider whether or not they want to take any action on it.
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. And that's exactly at the end of my talking points tomorrow is going to be one of my recommendations. And I'll have that same recommendation to the CCOA, but then also for a task force to consider that we put something in front of the FCC, just explaining the concern and the problems it's creating. We have examples across the entire state. So it's definitely not isolated to Northern Colorado or Eastern Colorado. It's throughout the entire state. It's just hard to track down because dispatchers are processing calls, and they do a great job just working through the lack of information, but it's not going to go away. It may even just get a little bit worse as carriers turn down those networks.
Great. Thank you for the update, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
Yep. The other item I took from last month's meeting was the responsiveness on the Lumen knock. I think. Oh, Matt, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I tried to skip you.
No worries.
Kimberly, do you have materials that you can share for reference regarding this issue?
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to attend the task force meeting tomorrow, for example, but we may not be the only ones interested in those materials.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a little PowerPoint that I put together that I'm happy to share.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know Kimberly and Daryl, you were working, I think, with the outage committee on the knock responsiveness. Did you have an update you wanted to provide or no?
Yes, I can. So yesterday, the outage committee met with Wes and Carl. Help me out, Wes. What is Carl's last name?
Klein,
Carl Klein.
K-L-E-I-N.
Yeah, Carl Klein. He is a supervisor, I think, at the Minneapolis NOC for CenturyLink. Tim was also able to join us later in the call, and we had a fairly long and detailed discussion about the issues that some of the public safety answering points have been reporting about, issues that they've been having communicating with the NOC, meaning long hold times, for example, and other issues. Carl was able to give us sort of a rundown of things that CenturyLink is doing to hopefully improve the responsiveness of the NOC, reduce the hold times, and generally improve their responsiveness. Some of the issues he talked about that have caused their current situation is primarily due to staffing issues throughout the pandemic, which is probably not a surprise to a lot of the PSAPs on this call as well. Other than that, I think Kimberly had some specific questions for him as well regarding some outages that they've had or experiences that they've had in Larimer County. So I think I'll turn it over to Kimberly, see if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so the lack of knock reply really impacted us when we were getting outage notifications and couldn't get them to answer whether or not it was a 911 outage. And of course, the large scope of the outage. So 2.5 hours on hold with a knock, definitely it's not acceptable, and they needed to triage, in our opinion, to at least start processing those calls. So I think, and Daryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the big picture here is that we need to be vocal and active, and we should probably maybe consider having a spreadsheet where we can flag knock issues, because that way we can give that feedback to Lumen, because they want to know if there's issues because they've made all those changes with hiring these temp personnel folks. So, my takeaway is they're working on the problem from that issue of hold times, but there's more to it too. It could be the communication on the text responding, timeliness feedback, how they're managing the whole event. So my recommendation would be that we have a spreadsheet for this group that as we learn of issues, if you're experiencing an issue, we can just flag that in and add it into a spreadsheet.
I think that's a good idea, Kimberly. Do you think this group would be the best place to house that spreadsheet and that effort to gather that information, or the outage committee?
Well, sometimes, yeah, it probably doesn't matter. I think the outage committee should have access to it, but there's times that you're calling the NOC and reporting issues, alarms, anti-alley, circuit issues, and it's not just about an outage, and the hold times are incredible. And so I would say that the NOC relationship with Colorado is more than just outage processing. So that's why I was thinking in this particular folder, but we could probably link two together, right? We could have like a document title that you click on in either committee folder that takes you back to where the folder's housed.
So with that comment, Tina, what I would suggest is that we go ahead and start a spreadsheet that tracks those types of issues or complaints. Maybe we can even send an email out to all of the 911 centers telling them that this exists, and then maybe have that as a standing agenda item for the ESInet users group.
Yep, I think that sounds great, Daryl. All right. Does anybody have any old business that I missed, or anything they wanted to talk about before I move on to new business? Okay, Kimberly, I'll let you go ahead and discuss the item for new business.
I feel like this meeting's all about me. So sorry about that, you guys. I don't mean to
It's the Kimberly show.
don't mean to demand so much attention today. My goodness. And this isn't really about me. It was just an ask, and the ask is part of an item from the tariff settlement agreement from 2018 that Lumen should be providing is just the extension replacement of the contract between Lumen and Entrado, and being able to have that on file. It's supposed to be provided over to the ESInet group. So it's part of that tariff settlement, but it's really for this group to have, because there's such a close relationship between Lumen and Entrado for this ESInet solution. And so that was the ask of just that document, and if that document has been provided, and we don't believe it's been provided. So I'm not sure if that would be you, Wes, or if you're going to hand it over and give that to Tracy, but we're wondering if we can get a time frame for that to be submitted to Tina.
Yeah, well, that shouldn't be a problem complying with that. I didn't realize that, quite frankly, was, we'll focus on getting that done. So that
Okay.
should be easy to do.
All right, Wes, we can talk offline and you can let me know when you can get that. Daryl.
So just to let everyone know, part of Entrado is changing owners again. And as part of that, they had to file for approval from the commission for that transfer of ownership. One of the things that we did as part of our analysis of that application for transfer of ownership was to ask them about this particular issue as to whether they have a contract in place with CenturyLink. Unfortunately, the part of Entrado that is transferring ownership is not the part of Entrado that is the party to this contract. So they were unable to provide it, but they did mention that the contract renews annually now, as opposed to in the past. I know it was an issue that there was a hard deadline on the expiration of the contract at one point, and that caused some issues back in, I want to say 2014, when it last came up. But I do not have an updated copy of it. Maybe that's something that Tim or someone else from the CenturyLink team can provide for a future meeting.
Well, yeah. Hey, Daryl, that would actually go through product management that controls that relationship, the folks over there. But I know who they are, and I will ask them to bridge the gap here on that and confirm that that's still going forward and it's all in place.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Wes. Does anybody have any other new business items that they'd like to discuss? Okay, we'll move on to open discussion. Concerns from any PSAPs or authorities to Lumen? Kimberly?
So this is somewhat tied to the ESInet, but not really, and it's more about ADE extracts. So we get an ADE extract monthly for our emergency notification system, and the numbers have drastically decreased this month. So we think there could be something wrong with the extract. And when we reached out to Entrado, since Entrado provides that, they said that Lumen actually has to provide that. So very bizarre. So my question really is to Tracy, is there a good contact with Lumen that we can fold in on this discussion about getting that ADE extract and helping us work with Entrado on that? Because again, Entrado saying it's you guys, even though they provide it to us.
No, I can answer that, Tracy, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
That should be on autopilot. Like I thought it was for Lita, but I could be wrong. But
No, it is Wes, but we see a problem in it. We have a problem with the record count, so we need to follow up.
yeah, Kathy Kendrick can do that. If you'll send an email to me, I don't know if you have Kathy Kendrick on your autopopulation. Just send it to me, and we can check that out. What I am curious, what was the percentage of drop of the TN count that you got on that?
It was about 8%, which is high for 1 month.
Agreed. Yeah.
Hi, Wes, this is Kathy. I'm on the call, so I'm taking notes here. So about an 8% call.
A TN count decrease from our the ADE. So Kathy, would you mind putting your email in chat, and then I can just include both of you?
Absolutely,
our-
I'll be glad to.
Thank you so much.
Anything else, Kimberly?
I can find the chat.
No, I'll stay on mute for the rest of the meeting.
Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with the transfer from 911 to 988. I did receive an email from Vicki Hyatt, I believe it was, I'd have to find it, stating that the problem needs to be corrected by Entrado, and they're looking at it being corrected in the second half of next year. I'm just curious as to why, if they know why it's taking so long. 988 went live in July of this year, so waiting over a year to be able to transfer to me just doesn't seem to be an acceptable practice.
I think Vicki left the meeting a while ago, Kathy.
Okay.
If you want to just send an email, do you have that email that you got from her?
Yes.
Do you want to forward it to me and we can reach out to her together to find out why such a long time on the fix?
Sure.
We can report back to the group next month.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Kathy, this is Daryl. In your discussions with him, I don't really understand what the issue is either, because it seems to me that you would just set it up as a one-button transfer to the toll-free number for the National Crisis Hotline. I don't understand what the problem is.
Yeah, this is Rich from Entrado. I don't understand what the problem is too. So, I mean, from generally speaking, it's a PSTN routable number, and we should technically, I don't know all the rules around it, but if it's a technical question, being able to reroute from a PSAP through the ESInet out to a PSTN number, we do it every day. So I'm curious as well.
Sorry, I was on mute.
I was going to say, I just made a note to myself to keep that in old business until it's resolved. So.
Yeah, Daryl, that's my fault. I thought it had been resolved, so I took it off.
Oh, okay.
Kathy, maybe we should just draft an email as to what the issue is and get that over to Rich and Daryl after we talk to Vicki.
Okay. Sounds good.
And Wes too, because obviously I think this applies to the previous conversation too. You know, we're supporting the system, but we're supporting it on behalf of Lumen. So any changes we made obviously need to be approved by Lumen as well. So if you want to copy Wes or Tracy or somebody on from Lumen, then we can get to the bottom of it.
Right.
We'll just
That
throw
would be
everybody on there.
Tina, I'm forwarding it to you right now. There's
Okay.
a little bit of a thread.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. We'll get that sent over to everybody and figure out what the issue is and why the delay on the fix.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, again, I could be mistaken, so I want to say that for the record. But if it's a PSTN transfer, I'm not sure what the issue is.
Thanks, Rich.
You know, unless something like our PSTN providers that we use to get it out to the public switch telephone network don't support 988. That could be it. But yeah, send it over. We'll take a look.
Okay, I appreciate that. Open issues from Lumen to PSAPs or authority?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Moving on to public comment. This is for non-voting members. Welcome to provide any comments or questions. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? All right, great. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned at 10:45. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.